Welcome back everyone to another video, and today we are talking about Kyler Murray in the Arizona Cardinals offense headed into this coming NFL season, the 2024 season. Kyler obviously had an ACL tear 2 years ago and missed majority of last season as well. But now he has a full healthy offseason. They've drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. and the offense is looking much different than it was just a couple seasons ago. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff. I would like to say, though, that I have now started our kind of team breakdown videos, which are like probably about an hour long each, going into the 2024 NFL season, starting with the Panthers, which is my personal favorite team. And then we'll be going in order from lowest on the division to highest. So go check that out if you didn't see it. This is not one of those. It's like one of those just kind of brief videos I wanted to make. There will be a more in-depth video on the Cardinals later on this offseason. So if you guys are a big Cardinals fan, make sure subscribe to my channel. Be on the lookout for that video and all my other NFL type of content and stuff like that. For this video though, so I wanted to start with just Kyler Murray last season. The Cardinals as a whole last season were looking a lot different, bringing in, they got rid of Cliff Kingsbury, brought in Jonathan Gannon as head coach, and it was by no means a successful season. You get I think 4 wins on the year. Granted, I will say they were in games a lot more than what their record shows. I think it's really important to kind of look at that kind of stuff and not just go strictly off the box score and the stats like that, because it doesn't tell the whole story. And the Cardinals, on paper, they didn't have a lot to work with last year anyway. And so all things considered, I feel like it wasn't that bad of a season. It wasn't like you were, the worst team in the league like the Panthers. So you kind of, saw some good things from your new head coach, got your franchise quarterback back later on in the year, and you managed to be just bad enough to get Marvin Harrison Jr., the best wide receiver in the draft, at number 4 overall. So in my opinion, it's a pretty successful year considering you weren't supposed to do a whole lot anyways. But yeah, so Kyler comes in my opinion, he honestly looks pretty good considering he missed so much time. New offense with the new head coach and all. He ends up having 13 total touchdowns to 5 interceptions, which again, considering that offense and him already coming off an ACL tear, I feel like it isn't the worst start in the world. But I think it's also important to look back at, Kyler's other healthy seasons, like 2021, for instance, before he tore his ACL in 2022. 2022, and we're going to look at that right now, it wasn't the best year by any means up until his injury anyways. We've seen better from the Cardinals. The Cardinals as a whole were really just kind of declining over the past couple of seasons anyway, and it was pretty clear there was going to have to be a change with either the coaching out or like a retooling in the draft or getting rid of some of their bigger players like DeAndre Hopkins or something. And they've kind of done that, but back in 2021 when they were, really kind of just, win first in mind, they were, I think 7-8-0 ultimately before they lost that one game in Green Bay, then kind of had a late season implosion, and then unfortunately lost first round to the eventual Super Bowl champs. But that season, Kyler was playing very, very well. 3,767 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions with 5 more rushing. So this is a guy that's very, very capable of being an NFL quarterback and being a successful NFL quarterback at that. So I think it's really interesting they kind of revamped this offense because it looks a lot different than it did just, again, like I said, a couple seasons ago, actually in 2021. And the first reason being is Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, being drafted to the Cardinals. He was graded as a 6.83 prospect grade, which is equivalent to a year 1 starter. If you guys, for some reason, are not very familiar with him, which I'd imagine if you're watching this video, you probably are, but, if you happen to not be, we are going to look at his strengths and weaknesses. And I'm not going to read through every single one of these. If you guys want to, pause the video, read through whatever you want to do there. But I will highlight a few. As far as his strengths go, though, runs routes with threatening pace and is sudden out of breaks. Plays with pro feet, working his boundary catches. Highly focused deep ball track with above average ball skills. This guy can really do it all. He does have some weaknesses, though, like they've said here. Had uncharacteristic drops in 2023. I'm not going to really kind of fixate on that too much. Yeah, it's something worth noting, but let's wait and see what he does in the NFL because he's already proved what he was in college despite maybe having some drop issues. Because that OSU offense was not as good as it was, previously with Stroud there anyways. So I think that's also worth noting for that context to it. But might not have enough blow-by speed to consistently outrun NFL corners and allowed grabby coverage too much leeway in disrupting his routes. So to me, these are a lot of things that, other than the speed thing, that he can really work on. And even the speed thing at that, if he really is not that fast able to run past corners, that might just not be his game. But as a route runner, he can still be a huge threat. And I'm not going to sound like some original take here saying this, but I think he's gonna be pretty good in the NFL. This is the #1 rated receiver in this draft, with Malik Neighbors pretty closely behind him, who, again, if it wasn't for Marvin Harrison Jr. being in this draft, Malik Neighbors would have been the top wide receiver without issue. He's also an amazing player, but Marvin Harrison Jr. Is a serious day one threat for any opposing defense. So then when you come to the Cardinals offense as of right now, I find this very interesting. So Kyler Murray, James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, they just signed Zay Jones, and Trey McBride make up the weapons. The offensive line, of course, they brought in Jonah Williams. They drafted Paris Johnson Jr. just the other year. But I want to fixate more on like the skill position guys, because what's interesting to me is, a few years ago, whenever the Cardinals were very, very good, this looked a lot different because they had someone like, DeAndre Hopkins, whereas right now they have a lot more youth in there, and they have a lot more, I don't want to say speed, but just different types of receivers than Hopkins. And personally, I think these type of players fit the Cardinals offense a bit more than someone like Hopkins. Hopkins was great in Arizona. I'm not saying that was a bad fit. They saw a lot of success. But I do think with what Jonathan Gannon wants to do, the kind of player Kyler Murray is, I think this offense is a lot more threatening across the middle or even deep. They have a lot of speed. James Conner is a great running back, especially out of the backfield as a receiving back. And they drafted Trey Benson, who I think will also be a very good running back as well. Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, and Zay Jones. Marvin Harrison Jr. we just talked about. This is someone that's going to see a lot of targets in year one, be an instant day one starter, and probably put up some very good rookie numbers. And then Michael Wilson, wide receiver 2, he played last year as a rookie in a terrible situation, to be honest, for a rookie wide receiver. It was the quarterback situation wasn't really pinned down, rookie head coach. And, he put up, half a thousand yards, I believe. He had a very solid rookie outing, and I don't think it was talked about a whole lot because he wasn't, one of the bigger names, and the Cardinals weren't, a very good team. But I think he's a perfectly capable wide receiver that, assuming he continues to develop, could be a, very good wide receiver number 2, at least in my opinion. And then Zay Jones, who's been around a few teams. I think he's Zay Jones. He's a pretty solid wide receiver number 3. He's not going to, light it up and be wide receiver 1 and consistently put up big numbers, but he's perfectly reliable. He's a good starter. Not much more than that, but I think in a situation where you have him starting and someone like Greg Dortch, who's, fairly solid, being a depth piece rather than a starter, that's a big difference because Greg Dortch is, while pretty solid, not really starting wide receiver caliber, at least in my opinion. I think he fits a lot better in a smaller role where he can get in, burn you a couple times, but not have to be relied on really heavily. So I think that role that pushes him back to wide receiver 4 is actually very beneficial to him and the Cardinals offense because they don't have to get desperate and put guys that aren't really ready to be in certain situations in those certain situations, if that makes sense. And then also, Trey McBride, I want to talk about. This guy had a very good season last year. And now that he has, another full offseason, putting in more work with Kyler Murray back for a full offseason together, then to kind of build that chemistry, I like that a lot. I think Trey McBride can be a top 10 tight end in the NFL. And I think especially in this offense, they can lean very heavily on him in the receiving game. So in my opinion, while I don't think the Cardinals might not get, 11 wins or something, I think this is going to be a very interesting year to see the direction this team is headed because I think they've done this rebuild pretty well, at least in my opinion. They've got rid of guys that just, they weren't going to make it on the team long term, like DeAndre Hopkins. Even getting rid of Rondale Moore, who while not being a terrible player, just wasn't really this new era of coaching, this new regime, if you will. He wasn't, he wasn't their guy. So I think it's good to get rid of him while he's still young. It helps him out. It's fair to him, gives him a new start while also allowing them to get the guys that they've scouted and that they like. So I think they've done this very well. I like Jonathan Gannon a lot. I really bought into what he's kind of brought to the Cardinals. Because last year, while it didn't equate to a whole lot of wins, they were competing in games while on paper they probably shouldn't have really been competing in. And now you get your quarterback back and healthy, Marvin Harrison Jr. added to the mix. Trey McBride, I think in another year, what was his year 3, I think he's going to be probably the best we'll see so far from him. I like this a lot for the Cardinals. I'm not going to go and say they're going to be a playoff team or anything like that just yet, but assuming this rebuild performs the way I think it should after what they've done just on paper, if that makes sense, I think we'll see a lot of flashes from this Cardinals offense this year. And the defense, well, we'll fixate more on that later on this offseason with my breakdown video on the entire team. But I like this offense a lot. However, I will say the schedule is not ideal for this rebuilding Cardinals team. You have Buffalo week 1, you have the Rams week 2, you have the Lions in there. Washington's a winnable one. I'm not going to go through game by game, but just looking at this, it's rough because they are probably at the bottom of their division. The 49ers are obviously a very, very tough team, one of the best in the entire NFL. The Rams showed a lot of promise last year. I think they were a lot better than like a lot of people thought, including myself. And then you even have the Seahawks, who, are always very competitive in there with the Cardinals. So, none of those divisional games are guaranteed at all. So you got to kind of really make sure you're taking advantage of all the, I don't want to say freebie, because no, NFL game is a freebie, but I do think there are games that you have to capitalize on. Like, I don't want to say Chargers, but depending on how they perform with their lack of weapons as of right now, maybe the Chargers, but for sure Washington, for sure New England, probably even Carolina, although in my personal thing, I had the Panthers winning that game, just for the record. But again, so this is a pretty tough schedule. The Bears are probably going to be pretty good. The Jets are a great defense. Miami is good. Green Bay is good. Detroit is good. Minnesota is going to be probably pretty comparable to the Cardinals, if not better. So I think the schedule is going to greatly work against them and might make them look a bit worse than what they really are, because this is a pretty tough schedule. But I think regardless, the offense is going to be very smooth, very dynamic, and way better than last year. So in my opinion, I am very excited to see Kyler Murray back and healthy this year. When healthy, he's one of the better dual threat quarterbacks in the entire NFL. I think, at his peak, I think his ceiling is probably a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's really hit that in at least a few seasons, if that. So we'll see if he gets there this year. I think it's going to be very interesting because he should have, I don't want to say the most competent weapons of his career, but it's going to be a very dynamic offense, and I'm really excited to see the way that works out for him. So that's going to do it for the video, though. If you guys are, Cardinals fans, or even if you're not, comment down below what you think the Cardinals are going to be doing this year. Do they reach 10 wins? Do they really surprise? Do they kind of stay, more like that 4 or 5 win territory? Anything like that? Or just how your favorite team is going to do this year. I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on that as well. But make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel for more videos like this. I rank a lot of I rank all teams. I rank a lot of players, offenses, defenses, team breakdown videos going into next year. I also do Madden videos, and I'll also be doing college football videos as well whenever that comes out in July. So it's always full content on the channel one way or another. Thank you guys for watching. I do really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.